U.S. Senate candidates were on the attack.
Seconds ago, you watched Decision 2016, the U.S. Senate debate produced by WPBF 25.
Senator, if you voted as much as you lied, you might actually be a decent senator.
It would have been a lot easier for him to win if I hadn't changed my mind. They would have passed.
Senator Marco Rubio fighting to get reelected. Congressman Patrick Murphy trying to convince voters he's the better choice. Good evening. I'm Felicia Rodriguez.
And I'm Tiffany Kenny. Thank you for joining us. Our colleague Todd McDermott moderated the debate that you saw exclusively right here. We have live team coverage on tonight's debate. We're going to get to Todd in just a few minutes, but we want to get right to Angela Rozier, who is covering Rubio's campaign from the spin room. Angela.
That's right. First one here today with the in the spin room, waiting for folks to gather here after they leave Bailey Hall after that debate. But I can tell you, moments after the debate started, it seemed like it was a friendly debate with a friendly handshake, and then it was right to business between both candidates. You saw Marco Rubio already having to defend his decision, some saying for not making a definitive decision or whether or not, if he wins, that he will indeed run the full 6 terms. Also, one of the hot topics on his Twitter account talking about that incident, also talking about medical care, saying that he would not want to have taxpayer money bail out insurance company, another topic on his Twitter account. Again, we're here in the spin room. You can see we're waiting for folks to gather here as they leave Bailey Hall and make their way here. As soon as someone does come in here and we'll ask them about their opinion, we'll be right back with you. Reporting live, back to you.
All right, thank you. And Sonica Dange joins us live with more on Patrick Murphy's campaign. Sonica?
Yeah, that's right. And again, we are also waiting for the surrogates for Patrick Murphy to come in and speak with us about how they think he did tonight. This was very important for Patrick Murphy as he's looking to close that gap between him and Senator Marco Rubio. As Patrick Murphy was speaking today, he did touch on several local cases that affect us here in South Florida, one of which, of course, being Zika, which was brought up near the end of the debate. He also brought up police shooting and against the police trust issues, rather, with the community, specifically talking about 2 very high-profile cases happening in his district, which, of course, we're all familiar with, DeMarcus Seamer as well as Corey Jones. All through this debate, Patrick Murphy's campaign has been tweeting from his Twitter account. He tweeted about issues like the Cuba embargo policies that haven't been working. Of course, we all know Murphy is in favor of reducing that and normalizing the trade between Cuba. He also spoke about Merrick Garland, the Supreme Court Justice nominee, and he called Marco Rubio out for not even taking the chance to meet Garland. Also on Twitter, something that he talked about that wasn't spoken here on this debate was the restoration of nonviolent ex-felons' voting rights. He actually tweeted about that many times tonight, but it's not something that we heard about the debate. Again, we are still waiting for surrogates to enter here in the spin room, so for now, let's turn it back over to you.
Sonica, thank you. Our Terry Parker is also there at Broward College. Let's go out to Terry with the latest on what you're out talking to voters, I understand, Terry.
That's right. Actually, a lot of voters are coming out right now at Bailey Hall after hearing that debate with Senator Marco Rubio and Patrick Murphy. Right here, we have someone who listened to the debate. Thank you so much. Oh, my gosh. At any rate, we're trying to get some of these voters to come tell us what they thought of the debate. Is anyone that? Here we go.
Hi. I thought Marco Rubio was awesome. I told him he was a beautiful man. He told me he's not, but I still think he is. I'm just wondering why he endorsed Donald Trump, though. It's kind of a setback. But other than that, I think he was
Well, were
great.
you impressed with his answer when he was asked about his support for Donald Trump?
Actually, he didn't even answer why he endorsed him. But I still think he did better than Patrick Murphy.
Do you overall? Now, were you a decided voter before the debate, or did you make up your mind after you heard them?
No, I made up my mind afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, really? What was the clincher for you?
The clincher, I don't know, his beautifulness, honestly. I don't know, he's just really smart. He's very intelligent, and he has the experience. I mean, even though he doesn't show up for office, you know, everything he said, Patrick Murphy's just not in the same level as he is, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us, and that is someone who now, after tonight's debate, says she is definitely for Marco Rubio, and she admires almost everything about him except for his support for Donald Trump. Earlier tonight, we went to just down the street where there are lots of people who were for both candidates. We had people from the union who were supporting Patrick Murphy, and then we had people who are strongly for Marco Rubio, both of them lining the streets here to Broward College, chanting, waving their signs. One of the Patrick Murphy side was actually playing on loop over and over the Billy Bush tape of Donald Trump making those lewd comments about women. They had it bleeped out, but they were playing it over and over, trying to make a point for their side. Of course, none of them were allowed here. Now, do we have anyone else that would like to tell us their, come on. Hi, I'm Terry Parker. Now, when you came to the debate, did you feel like you knew beforehand, or you were an undecided voter?
I was an undecided voter, but after I heard everybody's, what could I say? After I heard everybody say what they had to say and how they felt and proof to back it up, I think I made up my mind, but I'm not sure. I don't want to say.
Okay.
Everybody did great, and I feel as if Marco Rubio, he had more facts to back it up, while the other guy, he was just.
Okay.
He kind of got emotional a little bit.
Yeah, he did. I mean,
and
they
every
both.
time they asked him a question, he.
Okay, we've got to wrap up right now, but thank you so much for giving us your input. We are right here outside Bailey Hall as voters leave after listening to the debate. I'm going to throw it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Terry, thank you. I know it's kind of hard to get people right on the spot. They walk right out to that, and they're not sure if they want to be on television.
Well, our Commitment 2016 team coverage continues with our exclusive political analyst, former Republican State Representative Adam Hasner, and former Democratic U.S. Congressman Ron Klein.
All right, gentlemen, the first question actually goes to both of you. I want to hear your thoughts on the debate tonight. Adam, we'll start with you.
Well, I thought it was a heated debate. I thought they went at each other a little bit more than they did in the first debate, but I think that there were a lot of common themes. I think it was every time Patrick Murphy got stuck in a corner, he tried to turn back and play the Trump card. I don't think that that was effective. I think Patrick Murphy was shown to be way out of his depth on foreign policy. Marco Rubio, very aggressive on Obamacare and turning the tables on Murphy on that as well. And so I think, again, Murphy was not able to demonstrate his grasp and knowledge of the issues, whereas Marco Rubio went through time and again, listing off all of his different accomplishments and comparing that with Patrick Murphy's lack of accomplishments during his 4 years in Congress.
Ron, what about you?
I guess, surprise, surprise, I have a different view.
Did you watch the same debate?
I guess we did. No, I actually thought Patrick Murphy came out very strong tonight. He was much better prepared. I think last time he tried, he wasn't as experienced. We have to recognize that Marco's coming in here with all the past presidential debates. That's a big deal. Patrick was starting out for the first time, but tonight I thought he hit it hard. He obviously tied Rubio to Trump, which is obviously a big issue. A lot of people don't like Donald Trump, and the fact that Marco continues to support him despite all these criticisms he's made of him about the nuclear issue and his irresponsibility of talking about other people, I think it was pretty clear. And then Cuba and a lot of other issues, I think Patrick came out very strong.
It did have a very different feel, though, than the first debate.
I believe so, yes.
You agree too, right, Adam?
For sure. They were definitely at each other. I think they were much more into the attacks in this debate than they were in the first debate. And I think this debate, again, though, still had a lot of policy in it. We talked about a lot of issues. We talked about the economy in this debate a little bit more. And I think Marco made a great comment where he was able to actually tie Patrick Murphy's complaints about the economy and tie it to Obama. So I thought there was a lot of good exchanges, a lot of back and forth.
It's interesting though, because Marco has this tried and true self-confident kind of approach. If I say it enough times, if I say it very confidently, everybody's going to believe me. And I think this debate, Patrick came forward, demonstrated with facts his positions on trickle-down economics, which is this failed policy that Republicans and Marco just push every time, and even foreign policy. I thought he was well prepared and laid it out very nicely.
Did you have a favorite moment in the debate?
Yeah, I think it was clear when Marco was able to really demonstrate his knowledge on Syria and on foreign policy. And that's when I think Patrick Murphy looked like he was in the deep end of the pool without any help. And I think that was really that one moment when Marco turned to him and started talking about the Peshmergas, that they're not in Syria, that they're in Iraq. I think that really just emphasized that point that we've been talking about, that Marco is much more eloquent, much more knowledgeable on these issues. And to Ron's point, Patrick Murphy doesn't have the experience on the debate stage, but the reality is that he doesn't have the knowledge on the issues.
Well, I'd have to disagree with that. I think he demonstrated he does have the knowledge on the issues, and this was, in my view, sort of a Democrat-Republican differentiation. Whether it's tax policy, whether it's health care, I mean, the same tried and true failed things that Marco was talking about. Oh, I don't like this Obamacare, but I got nothing really to offer. It's the same old tax credits. Well, you know, tax credits don't work if people don't have enough income to have the credit to apply against.
Right.
Low-income people don't get benefit. It's the same old thing that Marco's putting forward, and you know, it's just what it is. But big difference between the two.
Well, as you both mentioned, they did get a lot of policy in, and I think we can credit our own Todd McDermott for keeping them on task. He made sure that he, kept them focused on the issues at hand. We want to now go out to Todd. Congratulations, Todd. It was a great debate. You did a wonderful job, and we're all very proud of you back here. We know that's very difficult to keep two candidates focused on the issues.
I did hear the word congratulations, Tiffany. I should tell you, we have a little communication issue. Better now than during the debate. I thought it was I know we just heard from the two analysts, I thought it was a very lively, interesting debate. The crowd was very much into it. And I want to, if I could, play some of that sound. It's something that our two analysts, Ron Klein and Adam Hasner, spoke about. That is the Syria question and the correction that Senator Rubio made to Congressman Murphy, which the crowd also reacted to, despite the fact that I asked them not to make any reactions. Let's take a listen to that.
Senator Rubio and I, both members of the Intelligence Committee, know how complicated it is. But we also both know that Donald Trump probably can't name or identify any of those groups or their involvement. Yet you are continuing to support Donald Trump. We have seen 16 U.S. senators not only disavow Donald Trump, but unendorse him because they know how dangerous he is to our country. So you've got to be able to stand up to people like Donald Trump if you care about our national security.
Gentlemen, at this point, we're going to stop this.
Yeah, but I'm not just saying because he criticized someone for not knowing the facts about the region. Congressman, there are no Peshmerga in Syria. The Peshmerga are Iraqi.
Yes,
so again, no,
and they are helping us fight.
In Iraq, not in Syria. The Syrian Kurds, in fact, don't get along with the Iraqi Kurds, which is adding more to the complexity of the region. Here's the bottom line. Syria is not going to be New Zealand anytime in the near future. Our interest in that...
Just toss back. What do I do next when I finish here? All right. Apparently, I'm back on the air. Now, that moment, obviously, might have proved embarrassing for the congressman at some point, but you heard the name Donald Trump. He made the point that Donald Trump wouldn't have known any of that either. One of the key differences in this debate, and it's something that our panelists and our editorial team tried to do, is to have these two gentlemen, these two public servants serving the state of Florida and Washington, talk more about themselves and their policies. There wasn't as much, I felt, about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in this debate. In the last, which I covered live from Orlando and UCF, that was just seems like yesterday to me. But this debate, and I'm being told that at this point, because of our audio issues here, I want to send it back to the studio to Tiffany and Felicia. I wish I could talk to you both more, but I can't hear you.
Todd, we know how that goes. All right, we'll check back in with you in a little bit. WPBF 25 News is your official Commitment 2016 headquarters.
For any breaking news updates, you can download our WPBF 25 News app to get push alerts sent straight to your smartphone. We will be right back.